system. The EPA is trying to reduce that number throughout the state, and we're working with them in projects like this to accomplish that. One thing about this system is we have water to the middle school. It goes out Copley Road, and then it goes south down Cleveland-Massillon. What this project will allow us to do is go through the neighborhood of Druid and then connect from the south, which will loop our system, which will help with disinfection of our water instead of a dead-end line. So, Jeff, if you want to.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is an exciting project for Akron Water, simply because when a number of these water lines went in over 20 years ago, most of them were put in the mid to late 90s, there hasn't been much expansion off those lines. So as Chris has mentioned, we're always looking at ways to improve water quality and such, but the cost benefit is just never there. It's way too expensive to extend lines, most especially in this construction environment that we're in now. So we were made aware of a program that the EPA was offering where you could extend lines and receive 75% principal forgiveness. So thanks to Mayor Horgan, he went down to Columbus with myself and the service director's office, and we lobbied to Director Butler as to the importance of this project to improve water quality, not only for the residents in Copley Township, but also for the residents of Akron. And fortunately for us, we went through the application process in March, and our project scored well enough to receive $1 million of the $10 million of available funding. The remaining, as Mr. Luddle mentioned, is going to be funded by those who tap in. So we're talking about the schools, we're talking about a church, and we're talking somewhere around 40 residents. So it's been an excellent project for Akron Water, and the other benefit too is that these residents pay a premium of 22.5% more than what Akron residents do. So it will bring in more income to Akron Water as well as new infrastructure, added the water quality benefits. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? Councilman Freeman?
The difference between the million and the 1,294,000, 294,000, does that come out of a revolving fund we have, or do we debt that? Because obviously we're not going to get $294,000 worth of tie-in fees real quick.
So the remaining $294,000 will be covered by connection fees for those that are tying in, which will include those 4 public water systems that Krista mentioned, which is the Copley Fairlawn schools. They actually have 3 of them, and then the United Methodist Church of Copley, who has another, and then about 40 residents. Now, we are offering 2 programs for the residents where you could pay us the cash immediately, which their tap-in fees are going to be about $4,200 to connect, or you can finance that over the course of 15 years. This will be a loan. This loan is going through the Water Supply Revolving Loan Fund. When we receive the $200,000, we'll either use that money to pay down the loan if those decide to take that debt, or if we actually get the $200 and some thousand in upfront payments, which we don't expect, but we could just pay down the debt and no longer have that.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilman Kilby?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So there's 40 residents currently out there in this area, 40 houses?
There are about 80 residents that front this line, and based on initial surveys, about 40 of them have committed to signing in.
Okay. So we can't make the other ones force them to sign in, huh?
No, unlike sewer, there are no rules that force people to connect into a drinking water system.
So is everybody connected to our sewer system out there?
No, there is no sewer system.
That's not our sewer.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? Council members? What's your pleasure, Mr.
Consent's
Luddle?
fine.
Consent. Can I get a motion for consent? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next piece. Ordinance authorizing Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids for up to a 3-year maintenance agreement with Itron for the testing, repair, and replacement of existing handheld AMR meter reading field collector units and declaring an emergency. Mr. Ludlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. This is our equipment that reads the meter. We have about 90,000 water meters out there. We have a vehicle that drives around and picks up all this information. Then our inspectors have the handheld devices that can go out in the field and get readings off the meters if we feel like we didn't get a reading when we did the drive-by. So this company, we have about 12 of these units, and they will take these units. We have a couple spares, and it's just preventative maintenance, calibration, or repair of these units.
Do we have to pay extra for them to calibrate them?
It's all in this agreement.
All in the agreement, okay, thank you. Any questions from committee members? Council?
Consent's fine.
Motion for consent?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Bear with me, my iPad is acting crazy.
Yeah, mine
All
does.
right. Yeah. Next one. Ordinance authorizing Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into an agreement with the City of Hudson to define the cost-sharing responsibilities in the restoration of Middleton Road, authorizing compensation reimbursement to the City of Hudson in accordance with such agreement and declaring an emergency. Mr. Ludlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. We have a project currently that's going to start in the spring of 19. We're replacing about 1.5 miles of 16-inch water main on Middleton Road. That has been bid and awarded. In that project, basically we're going to take out one lane of Middleton Road to install this water main. We have an agreement with the City of Hudson that they're going to do the restoration. So we'll go in, we'll put the water main in, we'll put the temporary road back in so it could be drivable, then Hudson's going to take over the restoration. So this is to pay Hudson the portion of the restoration, so we don't have to contract that out.
Okay. Any questions from committee members?
Just want to
Councilman
please
Swirsky?
just describe what restoration is there.
Well, basically putting the road back. So they're going to have to put the road back, base back in, and then asphalt the road. So they're going to incorporate that in another project they have with Middleton Road. So that's why we're doing that. Instead of us just repairing the trench, they're going to actually, we're paying them for just the trench repair, but they're going to go ahead and pave the whole road. So they didn't want us to do the trench repair, and they come back in and do the whole road. So we're just paying for our restoration part.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from committee members? Council? Councilwoman Sims?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Ludlow, the line replacement is not in here.
No,
It's just the...
just the restoration.
Okay, thank you.
Your pleasure.
Consent's fine.
Consent. Can I get a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
Can I get a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, number 9. Uh-oh. Thank God for paper. Ordinance prohibiting the City of Akron utility bill to exceed 150% of the average of the previous 12 monthly bills, provided that the excess water usage was not intended for property owner, and declaring an emergency. This is Mr. Kilby's piece, so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a piece of legislation to address a serious problem we have in our city with people not being able to pay their utility bill, water and sewer. Never was a problem until our sewer rates went through the roof. Now, water and sewer is the largest utility bill most people face. And it's year-round. It's not like your gas bill might spike a little bit in the wintertime for heating season, but then it goes down in the summertime. This is constantly. Now, a couple years ago, the administration instituted a policy My contention is the policy does not go far enough to help people, through no fault of their own, have an astronomical water bill, mostly because of the sewer. Now, the policy is better than nothing, but it's not, so many people are not qualifying, and half of our houses are probably rental properties nowadays, half. And, you know, we have a lot of poor people in this city. We have a homeless problem in this city, as we all know. So this is water that was never put down the sewers. This is water that leaked, either a toilet or a pipe or whatever underground. And I'm just thinking we need an ordinance to address this problem, not a policy. Ordinances are laws, policies are just policies, and people are literally losing their houses over this problem we have, and I'd like this committee to consider this legislation. Don't need to act on it today. I'd like to start this conversation back up. We had this conversation a couple years ago, and the administration instituted this policy. Now, you know, we can bring in people January that can tell us their stories, people that lost their houses because of a leaky pipe or a leaky toilet. There's no intent to help out irresponsible landlords, commonly called slum landlords, which not all landlords are slum landlords. We do have our share of them, but it's very, very difficult to do a lot of good without some people maybe benefiting indirectly. And by tightening it up too much, which I think we have with this policy, we've prevented a lot of people that deserve some relief from getting it. Now, like I said, the water was never used anyways. We have an abundance of water. I heard somewhere along the line that when Mr. Ledoux built our watershed, our water system back 100 years ago, he was thinking of maybe having a city of 2 or 3 million people. So we have the capacity, we have a lot of water. We're dumping water down storm sewers to keep the water flowing. And there is some cost to the water, but very, very little. It's sewer. And unfortunately, we don't meter sewer use at a house. It's all based on water usage. So when you have something like this that goes wrong, a leaky toilet, a leaky pipe, you may not know it until you get a $900 or $1,000 water bill. Something's going on down in the basement or underground. Some people say, well, it's up to them to fix a pipe. We all know that. That's true. But some of these people are senior citizens. They have say they have a toilet downstairs. They don't even know it's running. And they won't know it until they get a bill. And then when that bill exceeds 150% of the average usage for the last year, it triggers this ordinance. And it just gives people relief from that excess amount. They still have to pay for the water. So I think it's a good ordinance, something we need in a city like this to protect people from our failure as a city to address this here combined sewer overflow problem, which was ignored for 30 years ago. The EPA told us to do this. The administration at that time ignored it. We lost a lawsuit, and by the time we lost the lawsuit and were ordered to do this, the EPA no longer helped us out any. Cities like Dayton, Ohio, which is very similar to us, have had a combined sewer overflow problem. They took it serious when they were first told to do it. and their water and sewer bills are not nearly as high as ours. So I don't think poor people in this city should be punished for our irresponsible behavior. And that's what this ordinance would do. Give them a little bit of relief, and it's for everybody. It's bringing everybody into this relief. So with that, I just offer this for discussion. I hope we can get this passed sometime to help poor people stay in their houses.
Thank you, Mr. Kilby. Do we have any questions from committee members? I have a couple questions. I don't know who from the administration can answer those or not. It may seem a little, I don't know if we're able to do this or not, but is there a way we can get a list of how many residents in the calendar year 2018 who actually had over a $500 water bill? Is that even possible to do? I know we have all these other programs where we help people when their water bills get so high, but if we have residents where in 1 month they have a water bill that's over 500, is there any kind of way we can track that, even if it's by zip code, where we can look at that while we're taking time on this?
We can do that, and I think it's important to note that, which we provided the City Council an update on the water bill relief policy. So a couple clarifying points.
Okay.
Any property owner is eligible for the water relief policy. Data-focused intervention, we have targeted toilet leaks, burst water pipes, and unknown underground leaks, because those are the three most prevalent issues that create astronomical, out of the realm, out of the norm water bills. And under this policy, property owners and homeowners are eligible for 100% relief. So we feel that the policy is more than working, because not only does it protect the city from the dangers of the proposed legislation, which I'd be happy to go into from the administration standpoint, but it also encourages maintenance. So, and you get multiple chances at a particular issue. So, for example, if someone had a burst pipe this winter and they apply for relief and get it, and then they have a leaky toilet a year later, they're still eligible for relief under the policy. So we can absolutely get you that information. As I said, we made this available to City Council. We also have a version that is policy origin to date, which the numbers are even higher.
Mr. Swirsky?
So what happens to people who have these high bills? Right now, they're all getting assistance? Is that?
So when people have high bills as it relates to one of these three areas, so a leaky toilet, burst water pipe, unknown underground leak, they work through the utilities billing office to apply for relief, which is fairly simple. There's a simple form that's filled out where they identify the issues. We verify it, and then we go ahead and credit that account based upon the problem being fixed. So it's in the person's best interest, right, to fix that. So if they determine there's a leaky toilet, we determine there's a leaky toilet and there's relief, obviously there's relief one time in a span of time for that particular issue. So there's an encouragement under the current policy for that homeowner or that property owner to go ahead and fix the leaky toilet so they don't have an ongoing issue. So what I can say is, under the current policy, yes, when people call and they say, look, I just got a $1,000 water bill, I must have a problem, we assist that homeowner or that property owner in trying to determine whether it's one of these three things, which it almost always is, and then we credit their account accordingly. Again, 100%.
Right. Mr. Kilby?
Okay, everyone's eligible to apply for this relief, but what are the stipulations that make them unqualified? Isn't it they have to be current on their water bill? Or
No.
they can't be behind on their water bill? Isn't that one of the stipulations that prevents them from qualifying?
No.
Okay, can you get us a copy of a list of all the people that have applied for this that have been denied, Mr. Hardy?
We'd be happy to provide all of that to you, yeah. And I would further, Madam Chairwoman, if I may, you know, we agree fundamentally that we are in the midst of an unaffordable program in the CSOs. No one here is going to disagree that water bills are affordable. They're not. We're working every day to bring these costs down through the consent decree amendments that we've put forward, through consolidated integrated planning, green for gray, and we are going in the right direction. But this piece before you today is not going to help its intended end user. In fact, it will hurt the intended end user. A couple of the biggest issues that we see with this, first of all, is the language of the actual ordinance, intent. Essentially, what this ordinance does, if you don't intend to use that much water, you can dispute that water bill. So if I don't intend to have my family use that much water or my tenant to use that much water, you can, under this current language, you can dispute that and get relief. Additionally, it could create incredible amounts of chaos for our master meter communities and for our JEDs where we have water agreements, because if that community says we didn't intend to use that much water, under this language, they can contest that, creating a real serious situation in terms of the way we budget for our water bills. But beyond that, it could essentially offer properties for utilities. And I want to be clear, because Councilman Kilby talked about water specifically. That is not the letter of the language of this ordinance. It says utility bills. And utility bills incorporates a lot of things. And so just looking at the way it's worded, snowbirds, how many of us know people in Akron who are gone 5 months out of the year when it gets really cold and they shut everything down and they're out of town and then they come back? Well, their water bill is going to look a lot different than you or I. And if they start using it and it's more than 150% of the 5 months prior that they weren't there, guess what they get? Free utilities. So the biggest concern, vacant properties could get free utilities for months, if not years, under this particular piece of legislation, the way it's worded. And again, at the end of the day, this is much like it was 2 years ago. This is Landlord Relief Act. That's what this is. This is the ability for landlords in our community who, yes, we don't have the utility bill in the tenant's name. It's in the property owner's name for good reason. They're the responsible property owner. And whether they're slumlords or they're responsible landlords, they have a responsibility to maintain that property and pay the water bills when their tenants can't. Under this, if a landlord doesn't intend to have their tenant use that much water, they can contest the water bills and say, well, I never intended to have my tenant use that much water. I'm not paying that bill. And under this language, they have the ability to get relief. So what we have tried to do from the administration's standpoint with the water bill relief policy is taking a responsible approach to providing real relief for homeowners and property owners that experience catastrophic water bills as a result of, again, burst pipes, leaky toilets, that sort of thing. The policy's working. The policy's working. So it begs the question, why bring in an ordinance to do essentially the same thing? Well, when you read the ordinance, it doesn't do the same thing. It creates a whole wide world of possibilities that at the end of the day benefit landlords more than homeowners. And the sad thing is, at the end of the day, whether you're a renter or whether you're a homeowner, you're the one who's going to have to pick up the slack. If a neighboring community disputes their master meter bill because they didn't intend for their residents to use that much water, we still have to pay. We still have to pay to maintain the CSO project. We still have to pay to maintain our water system. So that's going to fall on the backs of Akron homeowners and Akron renters always. And we don't believe that's the most responsible tack to take. We think that the policy is working. We would really love, as many of you have, help to push this program out. The more people that know about it, the more people can apply, the more people can get relief. But I urge City Council to ask deep questions and look at this carefully, because the language of this ordinance is incredibly dangerous. And at the end of the day, as I said, we believe it benefits landlords above all else.
Mr. Fusco?
No, go.
You go.
Yeah, I would, excuse me, just a comment and then a couple quick questions. Number one, I know it's fashionable to say that the city of Akron ignored the CSO program, that's fashionable, and I get that, I understand. But that's not the facts. I think we should put the facts out there. That in the 1990s, we challenged what the EPAs were asking us, the federal, specifically this federal EPA. We challenged that, and thank God we did. Let's think about this for just a second. Had we not challenged that, we wouldn't be able to finance these with 0% interest. We had been forced to finance for a 20-year note versus a 40 or 50-year note, or whatever it is that we're financing them at today. We wouldn't have that benefit. A second benefit is that we're more flexible in terms of the integrated plan that was approved and that we've been working with over the last several years. And that plan moves us from gray to green. Okay, so we challenged that. And then in 2003, even though we didn't have an agreement, we still put in 2003, we put in the tank over there on Cuyahoga Street, which took care of 33% of the effluent. That was in 2002, 2003, in that range. Okay, that's what we did. And then in 2015, we got an agreement with the EPAs, and everyone checked off on it in terms of saving over $300 million in terms of the way we were approaching and finding ways which recognize the integrated plan. 2006, 2007, in that range, what had happened was we had alignment with the federal EPA and the state EPA. We had alignment, but the judge said no. So, I mean, for years and years, we have been working toward this, and I say, thank goodness that we challenged, and I think at the end of the day, granted, it's expensive, and I think Mr. Hardy had mentioned, this is something that we have to deal with, and we have to deal with. And the thing of it is it is tough on our ratepayers. There's no questions about that. I got a couple questions, though, for you, Mr. Kilby. Who wrote this ordinance?
I did.
You wrote the ordinance? Yes. Okay, well, typically the way we operate around here is we have the law department or attorney prepare these ordinances, which also another set of eyes and several other sets of eyes, because typically if it impacts a department, that department gets to weigh in terms of...
Say that in the charter, we have to do it that way.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that, Mr. Kilby. I didn't say it's in the charter. I said typically what we do is the law department, they're the ones who prepare this legislation. And we have, I think we have a certain amount of comfort in the fact that it is being prepared by the city, and that they're checking off and making sure that it's prepared with the charter in mind, with the state, and as well as federal laws. And that's the one thing I think, in deviating from that and not ensuring that an attorney from the city of Akron is preparing, I think that's a slippery slope for us. That's just another comment. That's why I wanted to find out who wrote the...
Well, that's another problem we
just
have.
Curious.
Lack of independent law director. We all know the law director works for the mayor. So, so politics does get involved in stuff like this. And, do you think Congress in Washington, when they want a bill, asks the Justice Department to craft their legislation? Do you think the State House down in Columbus asks the Attorney General to write their legislation? No. They have people that write their legislation. Now, we don't have the resources to do that, but we should. And I always have believed we needed a more independent city council. But, okay, getting back to the original criticism, if, we challenged it. Yeah, I know we did that. But if we would have just done it back in the 80s, this problem would be behind us. We could have got it done much, much cheaper. That's what I mean by a failure to address this problem. I think this problem goes back to something like the 1971 Clean Water Act. 1971?
That was whenever the EPA was formed, the Clean Up Water Act was signed by
So
President
can we-
Nixon. I don't think the
I'm sorry, can we
CSO...
go back to questions? Can we stay on point here, guys, so we don't have a whole bunch of back
But
and
as far
forth,
as-
if we
Okay,
could?
we need to offer some relief to the poor people in this city that are getting thrown out of their houses because they can't pay their sewer bills, basically. And it's happening every day. And to sit here and ignore it, okay, we're not doing our job. And I've always said, we need to come up with another way of paying for it besides ratepayers. And people say, hey, Kilby, you come up with a plan. I have an idea. How about assessments? I don't have a law department. I don't have a economic department. They need to come up with some other way of paying for it. The administration, they can do that. It's our job to say people can no longer afford to pay these kind of utility bills. And we're the closest elected group to the people. At least we should be.
Mr. Fusco, you had a
Yes, thank you.
question?
No, well, one last question.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 1, Section 1, council recognizes that the city of Akron's utility customers have a human right to accessible clean water. Can you explain that?
I think water is a basic human right, don't you? 90% of the human body is made up of water. Clean water is a basic human right.
Okay,
It's
thank you. I was just asking a question. I wanted to make sure what the legal definition was.
Okay,
curious.
thank you. I have Councilman Neal, and I have Council President Somerville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mr. Kilby mentioned that he wants us to be able to take time on this. Nothing that comes in is perfect. But I think we all understand when we voted on this, I don't know how many years ago before this administration was in place, we understood that when we passed the legislation, it was imperfect because only half of our residents could afford the water bill. Since that time, let's look at what we've done to try to address that, because the reality of it is this: the water bill doesn't discriminate. Be you rich or poor, when you flush your toilet, basically it's going to be the same. And to Mr. Kilby's point, it is impacting our citizens. Half of our people rent. Now, this is my concern, and I wish we could get away from the landlord piece, because if we had any industry that supported half of our residents, we would do whatever we do. We give them TIFs, we give whatever we can to help them. Not asking to help the landlords. The reality of it is, those of our people that rent don't get HEAP relief. Our HEAP relief policy is not, here's that word again, is not equitable. It discriminates against those people that rent. So we passed a piece, it was a policy, and I don't know where it stands. It was called the LIFT program, Local Interventions for Financial Empowerment through Utility Payments, the Lift Up program. We were supposed to work hand in hand with United Way, because what it did was when people fell behind in their water bill, and if you remember, back when I was chair of Public Utilities, we found out that we write off almost $800,000 a year. Between $800,000 to $1.2 million a year, we write off, and it goes to the county, and they do the collections for us. We need to use that data, using analytics, to find out what is the reason for that. All those people aren't stiffs trying to get off on their water bill. Those are real people, like Mr. Kilbier said, some of them losing their homes, that eventually falls back on the city. So this is what I'd like to find out. Where are we with the Lift Up program? That was a piece passed by council, and I know the mayor said that they were going to work with United Way. The city was going to work with United Way. Where are we with that? So we can see where we, that gives us the data to find out why people are behind on their water bills. What is their economic piece? But if you remember when, at that time, Pastor Hampton, and I forget the gentleman's name that came down every time to petition us, he was saying that if you qualify for HEAP and you're a renter, on your other utility bills, you do not get relief from the city. We need to, there's things that need to be worked on this bill, but what we need to do as a city council is be serious about addressing this issue. We said we were going to address it back when we passed the first rate increase. And so, Mr. Hardy, as a part of the administration, you guys inherited this. But there's enough of us on council that remember the history behind this, that we have, this is a serious issue. And so, Madam Chair, what I ask is, we passed something called the Lift Up Program. Let's find out where that is.
Okay.
And we have a community partner like United Way that we can work with. And then we can find out how we can, because what I don't want to see us do is try to use the excuse, well, the law department didn't draft it or it's poorly written, whatever we want to say, and then we do nothing. When did we first pass the rate increase?
2014?
What are you looking at me for? Pardon?
I don't know.
I think it's
Okay,
2014.
let me put it like this. Whenever we passed it, we have not done anything to do a thorough analysis of how that rate increase impact half of our citizens. But this part we do know, and if we can address this with this legislation. Presently, our policy discriminates against renters who qualify for HEAP in every other way. And so I believe the basic premise of what Mr. Kilby has brought before us is to provide relief for those people who are literally losing their homes, being kicked out of them because they can't afford the water bill. And that is what we need to focus on. However we need to improve it, collectively working together. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right. Councilwoman Somerville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment on something that Councilman Neal just said that he talked about. I think he used the figure $1 million in terms of our current delinquency and how we're having issues recouping those funds. And we're talking about how language is so important, but when I look at how it's wrote up and it says, and I think this is maybe where Councilman Fusco was going, when he asked you, what does it mean customers have a human right to access clean water? I mean, legally, when you don't have legal counsel look at something, does that mean that legally the city of Akron cannot shut your water off when you just deliberately decide that you don't want to pay your bill? Because then what happens, how do we recoup those costs? He's saying 1.2 million is our current delinquencies and how we collect those. Wouldn't we be adding more money to that, just potentially on how it's wrote up? And I don't know if the administration can comment on that.
I mean, Council President Somerville, we echo your concerns in the sense that I don't think any of us here would argue the philosophy around access to water being critically important to civil society. The question is, what are the ramifications in running a water utility? And making sure, as we've talked about at council, where we do have delinquent rates where they are, what would be the impact to language of that nature to the point where if you don't pay your bill, there really is no ramification. So we share your concerns, but we'd have to look at it in more depth to give you solid answers there.
All right, thank you. Any questions from any council members?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure I responded to Councilman Neal that, yes, we will get you that information, that update on the Lift Up program. Wanted to make sure council is also aware that part of the integrated planning process is what's called an affordability study, which we've completed the preliminary part of, but it's an ongoing conversation with US EPA to show them factually that to your point that this is an unaffordable program the way it's designed as part of that consent decree. And I just wanted to make mention on behalf of some of the things that we're thinking about in 2019, that we agree that renters in this community make up a significant portion of our population. And one of the things that I hear an awful lot about when I'm out talking with folks isn't the high utility bills. It is the slum landlords and the absentee landlords who are not fixing the house at all. So it's beyond leaky toilet. There, in some cases, a toilet that doesn't even work, or windows are missing, or things of that nature. And so, Mayor Horgan, this administration really wants to work with council in 2019, and I think we will, on how we can strengthen our regulations and our ordinances around absentee landlordism, because people do lose their homes. But oftentimes, they're losing them for a multitude of reasons, one of which might be a high utility bill, but the bigger issue is that that house is uninhabitable, whether it's uninhabitable by code or it's uninhabitable because no person feels safe living there. It impacts our infant mortality rates, it impacts our violence rates. Housing is a big deal in this community, but so it's not picking on landlords, but it is holding property owners accountable for making sure that it's not just the water bill, it's maintaining your property so that human beings can live in a safe, clean environment. That is something we want to work with council on.
Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm glad that is on the front burner of this administration, because I think that's been really part of our concerns about investing in the neighborhoods. You know, we do a lot around tax abatements and all these wonderful things for housing the downtown areas, but that's what we're talking about that we see in the community often and needing relief. And so I'm glad that is priority on our agenda. But on this piece here, are we saying last year in 2015, since 2015, we spent the $500,000, or is this what's 2018 and what's 2015?
So on the top of that page, it gives you the dates. So this is just for calendar year 2018. We do have a chart that shows when we enacted the policy, which was middle of 2016 to date, which has different numbers, same charts, just different numbers that give you a look back from when we instituted the policy in 2016 all the way to current. But this in front of you is just January 1 to the end of November of this year, 2018.
Okay, because there's okay, on the right-hand margin where you have the leaky toilets, burst pipe, is that just the whole, since 2016, we spent $500,000?
No, that is just 2018.
That's 2018. So at the bottom, since, where you say since 2005,
that's cumulative.
that's just the contributions for...
That's just Akron Cares contributions, yes.
Okay.
So that's just what we have spent since 2015, when the Akron Cares program, I'm assuming, was created, to the end of November. That's how much we've spent on how many customers. So $132,987.97 to assist 857 Akron Water customers with paying their bills since the Akron Cares program created.
Okay.
All the above stuff outside the blue box, that's just calendar year 2018.
Okay, so I don't sound like a little dense.
You got
so
it.
Right here on the, I'm gonna go back to the right-hand side. Are these all of the overages residents have experienced as a result of all of these three things you delineated?
That's correct.
So, in order to bring relief, have we only spent $132,987 to address the $500,000?
No, so the way to read it would be under toilet leaks, for example, a total of $197,298.97 was credited to customers for toilet leaks. So that's the amount that was taken off their bill when they had a toilet leak that was verified. So that's separate from the Akron Cares.
Okay.
That's the money
Okay.
that we basically abated. Okay, so we forgave based upon their water leak.
So this is this the uncollectible in which you're speaking of, Ms. Councilman Neal?
No.
Okay. This is, so, okay, thank you.
We have Councilman Freeman, then Councilman Neal.
Just a quick question. I don't, Mr. Kilby, if this foregoing the, usage not intended language and the human right, do we have any idea what this would cost, the legislation that's before us?
Would that question be for Mr. Kilby or Mr. Hardy? I'm just...
Anyone in the room?
Please repeat it, Councilman. I apologize. What was your question?
No, I said foregoing the, the excess usage language and then the concern over human right to water. Has anybody done an analysis to see what would this cost? If we did say, go with the 150% mark, what would that cost the city?
We would need to look into that. So no, we have not done that analysis yet.
Thank you.
right, wait, let's do things in decency and order here. So Mr. Neal, Mr. Hoag, Mr. Kilby, okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Metro. Just wanted to put some in perspective, and this is the part where Mr. Kilby spoke about the homeless piece. Mr. Hardy, my mother used to live in what's the apartment that's in Highland Square? Is it Park 80? Park 80?
Tower 80.
Tower 80. My mother lived in Tower 80. Used to. She moved out because Tower 80 had a sign that the rent was going up in part because of the increased water bill. So what happens is, now if you could afford to live in Tower 80, you could live fine. But what happens is those people can't afford to live there, so they bump down. It's just a chain reaction. So folks, the part, I think, and Mr. Hardy spoke to this, we all know that this is real. The question is, are we going to do something that really is of substance to address the problem? We're not going to solve it today, but what I want us to hold, and this goes back, Madam President, to what I say when people come and speak across that podium. It's not enough for us to nod our heads and say yes. We've got to do something to address the problem. The problem is real. It impacts a majority of our residents. The one place where we can start is making sure that our policy regarding HEAP is equitable. And if we want to know how other utilities handle it, let's just look at how the gas company handles it. How does the electric company? First you've got to have the rate, the user identified so that you can't have repeat offenders. And that's what goes back to the Lift Up program that we passed. We've got to be able to identify those things. And then find out if the person is actually a repeat, somebody just being abusive, or do they need assistance? And that's the whole piece with the economic empowerment, literacy, the whole piece. So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to speak to that. This is real. It does cause homelessness. It does cause economic hardship on people. None of us can take full responsibility, but you know what? We're in the seats that are empowered to do something to address the issue. So I hope we do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoag?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to see this piece removed simply because we're in violation of, two different council rules. The first one is Rule 6.7, Uniform Report Form. All legislation reports, communications, etc., accepted by the clerk or council staff shall be accompanied by a completed uniform report form. No legislation received without the uniform report form will be considered by council. So with that, we are in violation of Rule 6.7. I also believe that Rule 6.9, introducing new legislation. All requests for new legislation must be submitted to the Director of Law by noon on Thursday preceding and so forth. I don't believe that this request was submitted to the Director of Law. Mr. Kilby said he wrote it up and brought it in himself, so therefore it is not following Rule 6.9. So I believe that in this violation of two rules of council, that this piece should be removed from our agenda. Thank you very much.
One second, Mr. Kilby. These are rules that I believe the law department should be aware of, and if they felt Mr. Kilby was violating something, I would rather hear that from the law department, one. Two, the form seems to be set up as if he sent it to the law department. Did you send this to the law department?
Our clerk took it over to the law department for review.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's continue on. Mr. Kilby, can you please, whatever you were going to say, I think we're getting a little redundant here, and I don't want us to start getting in our feelings about stuff. We will take time. Let's work something out where we can actually do something good for our community instead of arguing about it. I think that's what we need to be doing here. Mr. Kilby?
Yeah, I just want to clear up a couple things that have been said. First off, and this doesn't give anybody free water. When I say people have a right to access to clean water, it doesn't mean they have a right to free water, okay? They have a right to have access to it. Now, when their water gets shut off because they had a leaky toilet or a leaky pipe, they no longer have access to clean water. Secondly, I don't see how, Mr. Hardy, these other cities that purchase water from us are going to say, we didn't intend to use that much or whatever, because it's very clearly in the first paragraph talks about property owners. It doesn't talk about other cities that purchase water from the city of Akron, so I don't get what you're talking about there, sir. Finally, I would like the committee to take some time, and I thought this is such an important issue, because I come from a fairly poor ward. My ward, Ward 2, has got some of the poorest neighborhoods. I get calls 2 or 3 times a week about utility bills. I don't know how I'm going to pay this. So I think we, at the very least, owe it to the citizens that we represent a discussion about what we can do. And again, I don't think the policy is addressing the problem. The policy that we have in place doesn't take care of everybody. And to summarize it, I think Mr. Hardy, Chairwoman Samples asked for the list of all people that have had, or how many people had water bills over $500. That would be useful for us in our discussion. Secondly, how many people applied for this relief and were denied? That's what I'd like to know.
All right, we'll get that information to you. I'm going to let Brian from the Law Department clear up a couple matters, and then we'll move on from there.
Thank you, Chairperson Samples. So a couple of things I can clarify procedurally. There was a question about a uniform council report being submitted. I believe that approximately 2 weeks ago there was a UCR attached to the request. Whether or not that made it with the packet, I don't know, but I do believe that I did see a uniform council report originally. To the second point about whether or not the request came to the Law Department, the request was submitted to the Law Department. The Law Department looked at the ordinance for form only, not as to substance, and does not opine as to the legality of the substance, but rather just as to the form, the acceptability of the form. So what you have before you is a form that was approved by the Law Department, but not the underlying substance of the ordinance itself.
All right, thank you, Brian. So with that, if there isn't anything else, I would like for us to take time. Today is our last day, so we've got some weeks to really get some information to the Law Department and to Mr. Kilby, so we can address the questions that everyone had and get some forms back.
Motion for time?
From the Law Department. So I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. If we do not have anything else coming before us, we are adjourned.
Budget and Finance will meet in 1 minute.
missing here? Let's see.
I don't know which is worse. No thanks. I got a whole bunch of those things. We gotta be careful asking a man they want a kiss.
Hi, good, Bruce. How are you?
Budget and Finance Committee will commence in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We call to order the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. If we could have, thank you. All right, we have minutes before us from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Motion to accept.
And a second, all right, I have a motion to, actually, if, could we have a motion to vote on this, approve this for a vote this evening? Okay. A motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Okay, item number 2, do we have a motion from the committee? If not, we'll continue to take time. Let's go into new items here. We have, scroll down here. I'm sorry. Item number 1, this is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into agreement with the University of Akron School of Law to provide an amount not to exceed $25,000 for its expungement program in 2019 and declaring an emergency. Who'll be speaking, please? Mr. Bowman?
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We annually, for the past, I want to say maybe 5 years, have provided a grant to the University of Akron to assist with the expungement program, put on a number of clinics throughout the city each year and assist with people getting, their record or crimes expunged from their record. Professor Saul is here from the University of Akron who can answer specific questions about the program itself, if you have it.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you again for having us and for agreeing to consider funding us. I'm sure you probably saw in the Akron Beacon Journal the expungement law change this year. So now unlimited number of misdemeanors can get sealed and people can get up to 5 felonies sealed. There are still disqualifying offenses. The law changed as of the end of October. In our October and November clinic, we saw a dramatic rise in the number of people, and we anticipate that that's going to be the case, which means that the $25,000 you're giving to us is going to greatly expand, again, the number of people that we're going to serve. We are so busy, as a matter of fact, we probably are also going to hold clinics at the law school because we're seeing over 200 people on Saturdays in our 3-hour clinic for the new sealing law. I also wanted to tell you, I brought with me, there's a little cheat sheet that the Ohio Justice and Policy Center prepared. I'm going to give this to you. It's also on the website, so if you get calls in your ward offices, it's a nice little cheat sheet in case people want to know about they're eligible. I also have our January flyer. We do the clinics out in the community 11 months out of the year. If you'd like to host us every time I come, please feel free. I will say that we are the product of our own success because we need a very large locations now. We have between 30 and 40 volunteers who come out on a Saturday morning to do the clinics. So if you have lots of tables and chairs and space, we're happy to host you. The other thing I want to tell you about is, for those of you who've come, and you probably know, the other piece of our Saturday clinic is we offer that free driver's license advice. For people who do not have a valid driver's license, they can come to our clinic, and we have lawyers, judges, magistrates who will sit down with them one-on-one to help them get valid. We have a special program in place with Akron, Barberton, and Stowe to help with the fees. I will tell you, on January 31st, the Ohio BMV is instituting a driver's license amnesty program. They are going to have an amnesty program for some of the driver's license reinstatement fees, and if you are income eligible and you qualify, it will be a 100% forgiveness of the reinstatement fees that you owe to the BMV. And some of you probably already know, because you get calls in your offices all the time, that people owe thousands and thousands of dollars to the BMV. We are expecting that to also exponentially increase the number of people we are going to start seeing at our clinics after January 31st. So what I can say to you is the $25,000 goes a long way. We help a lot of people. We're already almost at 6,000 people we've helped since this program began, and I anticipate that we're probably easily going to have maybe half that number next year if we see 200 to 300 people every single month in our clinic. So in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, your money goes a long way to helping so many deserving people in our community who need to get a job and also need to be able to drive their cars and become valid and pay for car insurance. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I also have a form about the reinstatement program. Sorry, Sean. Sorry. Did you get the January flyer?
The OJP did a good job on this. This flows very well, this diagram that you've given us.
It's remarkable. They did a very nice job to make it what is
a
a complicated law very simple. And you'll see that our monthly flyer also has the link to our website. I know that Sean receives the monthly flyer from me, and the website always has our locations as well. So you can always link your constituents to our website to find out where the next outreach clinic is.
Very good. Thank you so very, very much. I guess I would ask the timing on this. We're not going to be meeting for a few weeks. Yes, Ms. Key.
I believe for them to set up their schedule for next year, if we could vote on this today, we know that Banner is not writing any checks or anything, but as long as they are aware that this has passed council. So I know that we still have the discussion part, but I would like a motion of suspension of the rules.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Any questions or comments from committee members or anyone else on council in the chambers? Ms. Keith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to rise in support of this program, which was started by, was a communion with Marco Somerville, if I recall correctly. And I'm going to tell you that I have seen it in my neighborhood, the difference that it makes, and the number of volunteers that come out to support this. You know, we make, I think I've said this more than one time, we make gazillion decisions, and every once in a while we're going to make a wrong decision. Sometimes that wrong decision gets you in trouble with the law. And if you have to go to the rest of your life with that hanging on your back that keeps you from getting your driver's license or keeps you from getting a job, that makes you feel a part of society instead of ostracized from society, this is so important, and it is done with such respect by the volunteers. And I can only say that Joanne has this passion, as do the volunteers, to put that hand out and say, can we lift you up and lift you out of what you're going through. And I can't say enough good things about it. I know that a number of my colleagues have had it in their wards. I can't wait till they come back, but they have outgrown every facility in Ward 8 so far because it just keeps growing. The word is out. So I would hope my colleagues get behind this with a favorable report and suspension of the rules, because for them to set their calendar for next year, we needed to go through. Okay, and with that, thank you to you and to all the people that support you and all the volunteers that you are able to gather for 3 hours on a Saturday.
Thank you, Ms. Keith. Questions or comments? Ms. Mobian?
I'd just like to say thank you. I know my sorority did a little volunteering not long ago, and I know all the law students and others that you have participating. So it certainly has been valuable to this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just hoping if you could speak a little more on the amnesty program. That just seems to be a big issue in low-income communities, trying to pay that off, and it feels like they're running down a rabbit hole. My question would be, can they apply for amnesty outside of coming to the clinics, or do they have to go through the clinics? Thank you.
They do not have to come to the clinics. The information I passed out to you, I'm going to be very frank, the BMV has not given us all the direction yet on the program. So what I know, it's why I gave you the sheet with the link. You will be able to apply, I believe, online. It is more complicated than it appears on the sheet, because depending on what your reinstatement fees are, what you owe, there is a benefit to having people come to the clinic, because we can do that triage to at least tell them initially if they're eligible, so they don't get disappointed if they apply and find out that they've waited 2 months and they're not eligible for the program. But they do not have to come to the clinic. They're going to be able, I think, to be able to go to the regional BMV offices and also apply online.
It sounds like it might be beneficial, really, for them to come through the clinic when that.
I think so. I don't want to. I want to say that to all my volunteers. We have hundreds and hundreds of people, but I do think it would be beneficial. I do.
I think so too. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Samples.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. I have a question. Have you all been inundated with the new law and how you can have more than one criminal record? I know you can answer this. I know
He can't.
So I get a lot of questions about that. How are you guys handling that? Because you can have more than one misdemeanor, you can have more than one felony now, and it all encompasses into, can they come to you? That's the biggest thing. Can
Absolutely. We started with our October clinic. We started taking people with multiple misdemeanors and multiple felonies. So Attorney Nichols, who runs the expungement program, we're ready to go. We have the paperwork. We piloted in October, and we've already filed for people who have multiple offenses, so we're ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, we do have a motion on the floor to move this forward and suspend the rules. And there is a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Very good. We will see that's passed out. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you. Next, we have an ordinance approving the Downtown Akron Special Improvement District petition and the services plan to be provided by the Downtown Akron Special Improvement District Incorporated and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a piece of legislation that we bring to council every 5 years, and it is to approve a 5-year plan for our Downtown Akron Special Improvement District, or SID, which was established back in the 1990s. It's about a 42-block area downtown, and the idea was to have a funding source to provide marketing of downtown, planning services, as well as improving the appearance and improving safety downtown. So those services are performed by the Downtown Akron Partnership, and I believe we have Susie Graham here from the Downtown Akron Partnership, that she could talk about the 5-year plan. You all should have a copy of the plan. It was submitted to the council clerk's office. If you haven't received that, we can certainly email it around. But Susie Graham will talk about a little bit about the 5-year plan.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee, for allowing me time to present this afternoon. I do have additional copies of the services plan if anyone would like to see one. And then because there's just not enough information to give you, I also did a little sort of a cheat sheet, but I have a feeling Joanne just put me to shame. So it's not going to be probably as descriptive as that, but this will help you sort of understand us at a glance on both sides of the document. So as mentioned, our organization was put into place in 1999 to help build the downtown neighborhood, and to do that in conjunction with the city by bringing in property ownership to help pay for these improvements so that the Downtown Akron Partnership can enhance the services that the city provides, and then anticipate the needs of the Special Improvement District to help provide those services so that we can become a better, stronger downtown together. Just let me know if you want more of those services plans. So on this cheat sheet document, if you see at the top, it mentions the Special Improvement District itself. The district is governed by a board of directors, a 7-person board of directors with city council president, a representative from the mayor's office, and then 5 property owners that create that special improvement district. On the back side, it's going to show you financially that the special improvement district takes each dollar that the city provides us and adds another 2 to it through the participation of our property owners in the downtown area. They pay a special assessed tax that goes before you as part of this process, and we renew our special improvement district every 5 years. Their assessment is based on 25% of their front footage and 75% of the assessed value of their property. And then that Special Improvement District Board helps select the agent who then carries out this special services agreement for the 5-year period, and in this case, it is Downtown Akron Partnership. So you can see that Downtown Akron Partnership is governed by a very large multi-sector board of directors, and then honestly, the work that is being directed is in a very small team of individuals. There are currently 7 of us, with 2 of us being completely funded through grants. So we have a very nimble team. We have 2 part-time employees, and then there are 5 full-time employees, 2 of those being completely funded by grant, so all of their activity is grant-related. And then you can see our 6 areas of focus that were determined in 2016. We did an internal strategic plan to help decide how best we can serve the downtown area. And then on the back, it really shows you where we are by the numbers. So the city's assessment specifically from the 2014 to 2019 period was roughly, and again, these numbers fluctuate a little bit, but it was about $291,517 annually. Our 2020 to 2014 assessment would be approximately $327,665. So it's about a $36,000 increase. The increase across the board is about $100,000. The city makes up 34.4% of our district, and currently we have 37.8% of our district petitioning with the approval of the Special Improvement District. So combined, that brings us to just about 72%, of which we need 60 to approve the renewal of the district. So I just threw an extraordinarily large amount of numbers at you, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the work that we do, how we do the work that we do, and how we are governed.
Ms. Amobian.
Yes, so the district actually, the new assessment will kick in 2020 and go to 2024. Sorry, yeah, we're not going to go backwards in time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The other question I have, and I think this also covers the north side area where the mayor has.
Thank you. I love answering that question. So the design was actually created by a local artist named April Couch. The whole project was funded by the John S. and James M. Knight Foundation, who is currently has given us a $1.5 million grant, and we are doing everything that we can to try to improve public space in downtown. So that was one of our first pilot projects. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And April usually works in very, very small scale, so it was an opportunity for us to take what she does in a very small scale and blow it up, so it can be appreciated from high up, but then also down low as well. Thank you.
Mr. Fusco.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Freeman. I think our downtown is in a good position in terms of the growth that we've seen, the interest in reference to the residential piece that's happening. We see during the summertime especially thousands and thousands of people coming down here. And we also have a pretty robust arts piece in terms of our downtown area now. There's just so much going on that's positive, and I think a very large, extremely large amount of the credit should go to Susie Graham and her organization, Downtown Akron Partnership. They have done a really, really good job in terms of, and we talked about this before, positioning our downtown to be successful, and I think they're a very large part of that. And thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you so much.
Questions or comments? Timing-wise on this, again?
Consent agenda is fine.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion for consent? A motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. And I think Mr. Fusco said we would all reiterate those comments. Kind of become a fixture here, and we appreciate, I honestly do think the continuity, having you here for, I don't know how long now, but...
As an organization, 18 years. As an individual, 7.
We've been the beneficiaries of that, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will continue to be worthy of our post. I truly appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, item number 4, this is an ordinance approving and authorizing the expenditure of $10,000 previously designated for the Akron City Council travel budget to be reallocated to the Akron Cares program and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
I will defer to Councilman Fusco.
Thank you so much. We have in the past seen residents come down and really talk about the great need of needing assistance, of course, on water bills. We've had great conversation, debate about it on today. I know this body has before in the past allotted $10,000 from our travel to go to Akron Cares. So again, this piece is just asking that we do that again. I did want to let this body know that the average amount credited under Akron Cares is like $158. So when we talk about adding an additional $10,000 to Akron Cares, we're talking about helping 63 more Akron families, this council body. So just wanted to make sure that you have that information and hope that we get your support on this piece.
Good time of year for this piece of legislation, too.
Absolutely.
Questions or comments? Ms. Samples.
I have 2 questions. First question, how much do we have in our council travel budget remaining after this? And secondly, how are we getting the word out to our residents? Because I tell you, I know every year we find at least $10,000 somewhere during the budget process that comes from council. But I have residents, every time I tell them to go to Akron Cares for help, by the time they call, there's no money. So I don't know, is there a way we can look and see which zip codes are really benefiting from it? Because I'll tell you, in my ward, every time they call, they're always exhausted. Even on that very first day, if they call, they'll tell them that there's no funding available. So I don't know, what kind of procedures we have in place for that. How do we get the word out? Is there like a priority list for people who have disconnection notices? Those are things that I really would like to know. Are we giving priority to those who have?
Well, yes, you have to have a delinquency to qualify under the terms. In terms of your question regarding the council travel budget, so currently there's about $16,670 left, but there's about $6,000 in travel charges that were done on the credit card remaining to hit. So, would put you about 10,000, less than 10,000, for this piece would be a very small amount left.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Keith?
I'm not sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure, Steve, if you would be the one I'd ask, but since we have this set up to go to Akron Cares, would it be possible to, is there a possibility of getting information that says how many people were served, what wards they were in that were served, so that we have a better idea of how it's being dispersed?
I will look to see if that information can be assembled, yes.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Got a question. Madam Chair, why did you select the travel budget and Mr. Fusco when we know that there's a piece of legislation in for the Balancing Act to be used from there? And I want to clarify that traveling budget isn't just our traveling budget. It is also our education budget. Our education, when you take classes for improvement to understand the job that we have, it comes out of what we call the travel budget, but it is also our education budget. Because the tool that is proposed, the Balancing Act tool, is to educate this council on how to do its job to oversee the budget. I mean, we've had discussion, I went back and looked at my emails, we've had discussion for over a year and a half on this. And at first it was endorsed by council and administration. Mr. Freeman told us how a 15-minute meeting went an hour, and there was great results from that meeting, but they said, oh, we don't have it in the budget. We'll budget it for 2018. Then 2018, it wasn't budgeted. We passed the legislation in April for the free trial. Then we didn't exercise the free trial because we didn't have anybody to put the information in. We've got somebody to put the information in. The company would do it. Then it was we had to find a funding source. Funding sources have been identified. Does this council, I mean, if it doesn't, just say it doesn't, because does this council want to allow, which is a part of the standard practice, legislative practice, allow its citizens to be engaged in the budget process? I mean, I've said before, this council had no clue that we received a $1.2 million workers' comp rebate refund last year. And that's happened several times since I've been on council. We had no idea. This council is supposed to reappropriate those funds. But we don't know. We had a $9 million shortfall last year. And I've asked several council members, I think they think I was joking, because I don't know. How are we going to cover that? We are not supposed to go into deficit spending as a government. We are supposed to balance our budget every year. What tool do we have? And I'm asking this question, please, somebody answer me. What tool do we have to understand our responsibility to balance the budget? So, I have great concern. I mean, there's still money going back from the My Neighborhood Akron program. That's going to go back into the budget, which I've shared. Since the initiation of that program, we sent back over $250,000 on the My Neighborhood Akron program. Now, let me put that in perspective. That $250,000 equals about a 3.8% of our reserve fund before we put in the money from the sale of the cell towers. That's significant because since I've been on council for 10 years.
Mr. Neal, we're way off target. No, I appreciate what you're saying.
Mr. Budget Chair, please.
But I think the question was to President Somerville and
this is all in context, though, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Because there's a piece that's sitting already for funding to come through to fund the Balancing Act. So all I'm asking is, this council could just say, no, we don't want the citizens have input in the budget.
So the question to President Somerville is, did you hear a question?
Yes, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
This question is to council. Because the money comes out of council's budget. The question is to council.
Okay. President Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why we brought forth a piece in this manner is because the last time that this body donated $10,000 to Akron Cares, it then too came out of the travel budget. But again, there's two pieces on the floor, Councilman Neal. So this body, again, who has the final say, can decide whether they want $10,000 to go to Akron Cares, or if they want to support your piece by purchasing the budgeting software. So again, this body will have the final say.
Okay. But, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I can, again, and this comes out of sincerity, and this comes out of understanding the budget, okay? The Akron Cares program is for the water fund. This council approved the fire hydrant bill. Yeah, and see, I get this, but see, when you don't understand the budget, this is why you make those comments. The money to paint the fire hydrant comes out of the water fund in which people pay their water bill. If we are serious about providing relief, why are we paying what's going to amount to $750,000 more to paint our fire hydrants, when the information has been brought to this body about numerous cities that are painting their fire hydrants through volunteers and through using the TANF dollars? So if we are serious about addressing this, why are we using the water fund money that comes from people paying their water bills to overpay to paint fire hydrants? Now, some people think, oh, you're just harping. No, those are the facts. Those are the facts. So if we're serious, I mean, we know how this is playing out. If we're serious about addressing this issue, there is one of the problems. Every year, we spend over $120,000 more easily than we need to pay to paint fire hydrants. Since we put that in place, we've spent over $500,000 more than we need to paint fire hydrants that could go to provide relief for people with their water bills. And again, if we're serious, this goes back to when Mr. Kilby's piece came in. If we're serious, we will do our business as a council.
We've talked this through. I need right now to find out if there's any other questions or comments, because you had your 5 minutes. Are there any questions or comments from?
I call for the question.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept this piece of legislation.
Suspended or consent?
Consent.
Okay. We have a motion for consent. Is there a second for consent? Okay. All in favor of consent, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, this item will be placed on the consent agenda, and that does not affect, I mean, we're not meeting till January. That doesn't affect anything, I hope. All right, if there's nothing else to come before us.
Well, hold on, Mr. Chairman. I do want to reiterate that if, assuming this is approved in January, then this will be applicable to the 2019 budget.
So do we need to, okay, how do we withdraw?
I withdraw.
Okay.
I withdraw my motion to have this placed on the consent agenda.
Thanks for bringing that up.
And I would like to make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
And then it'll apply towards the 2018 budget. Okay, motion and a second. Ma'am.
So since we know that, I guess this opens up another can of worms. So where is the current dollars coming from for We Care? I mean, what's Akron Cares? Where is that money coming from?
It's a combination of, I know that we have a lot of, dress down days where the funds raised through those are dedicated towards Akron Cares.
So how much is the total budget that we have for Akron Cares?
I'll get you that information.
So the $10,000 that we're now adding, do we have some outstanding, did we encumber some residents that we haven't paid for?
No.
So
this would allow the next time that the Akron Cares program is offered to, to accommodate more, water customers with relief.
I'm sorry.
Are you asking, okay, any expenses we've incurred in 2000?
Yeah, sorry, is
Okay.
this for expenses we've incurred in 2018? That's what I'm asking.
For the Akron Cares program?
Yeah.
No, it would be, so the money is offered in rounds of, where there's an interview process and people apply for relief. So every time we have one of those funds are exhausted and then more funds are raised.
So, can I continue? So are we approving in 2018 to encumber it for 2019? Is that what we're doing?
Right, so there would be funds available in the Akron Cares program budgeted for in 2018, assuming that this piece of legislation passes.
Okay. That's held in a fund that can be used next year then?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mobley.
So when you exhaust the funds and people call after that, there's no list or anything kept? Because it sounds like, according to Councilwoman Mosley Samples, she has residents who call and said the money is gone.
Right, so the money basically goes, in a very quick.
But you don't, I guess that's another piece of work for somebody, if you keep a waiting list, but you don't keep a list of folks calling after the money is gone. I'm just curious, do you or do you not?
I'll get you that information.
I mean, you
I
may
don't
not
know
have,
if they keep
you
a
may not
waiting
have
list
staff
for
to do it, I don't know, but it sounds like people are still calling after you've exhausted those funds. So if that's the case, if you have $10,000 coming in 2018, it appears that it could be used in 2018. I don't know how you do that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fricker, how much money is left in the My Neighborhood Akron Fund?
About $14,000.
And is that money, if it's not used by the end of the year, what happens to it?
It will be retained within the general fund.
So, I haven't finished my, okay.
I mean, we all have experience, I think, in reference to the Akron Cares program. There's a waiting list in essence. There's a considerable amount of folks who could really use this as soon as possible. So I would ask the committee to approve this evening.
So to that, I'm just trying to get clarity. So in my head, I'm thinking, when I saw this piece of legislation, that in my head that we ran out, and there was some people who were in this queue that needed to have some assistance. So we were going to reallocate the dollars from our travel budget to address that need. Are we saying that's not what's happening?
No, that is what's happening.
So so we do have a list of folks who need assistance, but we couldn't serve them, but now we can?
There are rounds of distributions of that money. It's, 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. And the next one is in 2019. So I don't believe there's any distribution scheduled for the rest of 2018. So if these funds are transferred as part of the 18 budget, they will be in the Akron Cares Fund available for the next round of distribution.
So I'm just trying to get clarity. So if we didn't have $10,000 in our travel budget to reallocate there, how would you handle that? Where would that money come from?
It's coming from, there's a constant stream of donations. Some of the utility payers donate to it, city employees donate to it. So that's how the fund is replenished continuously.
So finally, so we don't have an immediate need right now, if we pass this today, that we would be addressing someone's issue today?
It would provide, it would not happen in this year, but it would provide an extra $10,000 beyond what is scheduled to be put into the fund.
Thank you, Mr. Fricker.
Thank you. Ms. Samples.
I don't want to beat a dead horse with you, Steve. I just have questions on the distribution that I really just want answers to, that maybe only you can provide them from your department, if you can email them to me. So we have residents who always find out about it after the fact, but it's always gone. If someone applies for relief in 2017, and then they apply again in 2017 when there's more money available, is there a limit? Are they allowed to apply once a year, or they can just apply?
I will get you that information. I am not the expert on the mechanisms of distribution. I know that there are rounds of distribution, people apply, and typically the funds are pretty much exhausted every time they do one of those rounds of distribution. The donations do flow back into the fund again, and so during the next round of distribution, we can accommodate more people.
Okay, so I'm not sure how that department is handled, but I know like when you go through the LAIA program, they have stacks of applications. And then they go through them, and then if they run out of time, then you carry over. I'm just wondering, is there a process where if someone is calling for funding or assistance, that we have a log of who is applying? So now we're about to put $10,000 in there, but say that we had Miss Sarah on the south side of Akron who needed help, but she was told the fund was exhausted. So now there's about to be funds again where we've got Mary who just got funds at the beginning of the year. Now Mary knows the system. She's calling again, and now she's getting funding, but we have an elderly person in the south side of Akron who's been trying to get help and not getting help. I just don't want us to have this program and this system where some people are getting a head start in a race because they know somebody and they know money's coming. So now they're calling and they're getting help when we've got people out there who really, really need the help. So I just really want to get some clarity of how that is distributed.
I will get some information on exactly how the distribution process works.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Thank you. And I think we also would have a request from Councilwoman Keith and Councilman Kamer to have their names added.
Okay.
Okay, and I believe we had a motion on the floor for suspension of the rules, and then a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All right, opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Fricker. We appreciate it. And if there's nothing else to come before us, we are adjourned.